In this episode, we're going to do some things with some stuff. 4 of them. Well, winter is officially upon us. I thought we'd come inside and do a little something different. Build up something that we can take out in the cold weather and maybe even the snow. Why not? This is my buddy Mauricio's 2002 Honda TRX300EX. The extra X's. Story goes, bought this little while back from a buddy of his, said it was having some issues, gave him a really good deal on it. So he said, hey, bought it up, got it running, took it out, had a lot of fun with it, but it ended up smoking and he was getting some sputtering out of it. So he parked it, decided to go ahead and try and work on it himself, pulled it apart, said, hey, you know what? I don't want to deal with this right now. And the good old story of paying somebody else strikes again. He took it to somebody who never came through for him, never followed up, and just kept saying, oh yeah, it's good, it'll be good, oh yeah, we're good. And I got to talking to him not too long ago, and I said, hey man, bring it over, let's fire it up for you, we'll get it going. So it is complete, believe it or not. We got parts all over the place, but good solid frame, got the plastics out in the shed and motor up on the workbench. So we're gonna stay inside, get warm, put this thing back together, and maybe we can take it out and freeze our butts off later. Well, hopefully we can. Then I did my job right. Sure. All right, while we're getting ready to get dirty, let's talk about the four-wheeler, also known as the ATV, and how it became one of the most popular and fun off-road machines ever made. ATVs are designed to go places regular cars and motorcycles just can't. They're ridden like a motorcycle, steered with handlebars, and roll on big, low-pressure tires that let them float over dirt, mud, snow, and sand. Today, they're everywhere, on farms, ranches, trails, racetracks, but they didn't start out the way we know them now. To understand the modern four-wheeler, we've got to rewind to where it all began. The first true all-terrain machines hit the scene in the early 70s, and they didn't have 4 wheels, they had 3. In 1970, Honda introduced the US 90, later known as the all-terrain cycle, or ATC. This thing was simple, cheap, and shockingly capable. Farmers loved it, outdoorsmen loved it, and pretty much anyone who wanted to ride across snow, sand, or mud was hooked. Instead of suspension, early three-wheelers used massive low-pressure balloon tires to absorb bumps and keep the machine floating on soft terrain. And for a while, that worked, but there was a problem. Three-wheelers had a single front wheel and a solid rear axle with no differential. That meant both rear wheels turned at the same speed, even in corners. To keep the machine upright, riders had to constantly shift their body weight into every turn. If you didn't know what you were doing, the machine would remind you. By the late 1970s and early 80s, three-wheelers were incredibly popular and incredibly dangerous. Their high center of gravity combined with that rigid rear axle made rollovers common, especially for inexperienced riders or anyone pushing the speed a little too hard. Accidents piled up and regulators started paying attention. Manufacturers knew something had to change. The solution was straightforward from an engineering standpoint: increase stability, lower the center of gravity, and make the machine more forgiving. And the best way to do that? Add a fourth wheel. In 1982, Suzuki dropped the machine that changed everything, the Quad Runner LT 125. This is widely considered the first mass-produced four-wheeler ATV available to the public, and it marked the official shift away from three-wheelers. The Quad Runner wasn't flashy, but it was smartly designed. It featured a 5-speed semi-automatic transmission with reverse, which was huge for utility work. And its four-wheel layout provided immediate stability that three-wheelers just couldn't match. Early models still relied on low-pressure tires instead of full suspension systems, but the difference in handling was night and day. Riders no longer had to fight the machine just to stay upright. The four-wheeler had arrived, and it wasn't going anywhere. Once the quad became the standard, the ATV would quickly split into two distinct categories: utility and sport. ATVs were built to work. They got bigger frames, cargo racks, towing capability, and eventually four-wheel drive. These machines focused on torque, durability, and stability, perfect for farming, hunting, trail maintenance, and land management. Sport ATVs went the opposite direction. They were designed for speed, agility, and aggressive riding. Lighter frames, high revving engines, manual transmissions, long travel suspension, and usually two-wheel drive for maximum responsiveness. These are the machines you see racing motocross tracks and ripping through the dunes. What started as a simple three-wheeled experiment evolved into one of the most versatile off-road platforms ever created. The move to four wheels wasn't just about performance, it was about safety, stability, and making off-road riding accessible to more people. And that's why today, when someone says four-wheeler, they're talking about a machine that's been engineered, refined, and battle-tested for over 4 decades. And it's not going anywhere anytime soon. All right, so when he dropped it off, we went through some of the parts that he had laying in a box. He said some of the stuff is for it, some of it isn't. That is definitely the snorkel tube. Lots of new parts down here. I've got oil filters. I have bearings. Not really sure what's up with that. They're main bearings, what they are, but they are brand new. So I'll have to look up the part numbers on these and see if I can figure out what they're for. Now, he kind of gave me a little bit of the backstory of what they did. Ended up, he had a big bore kit that he put on there, and you'll see the motor's complete. Here's the old factory size. That's the factory bore, factory piston. Looks pretty good, but we've got a relatively new looking clutch kit here. Really smooth on the edges, and the pads don't look too bad, but he said that one that's in there slips. So if this fits and it's the right one, I'll look up some part numbers on that too and make sure it is, and we'll go ahead and make sure we get a new clutch in there. Got the cam, got all that stuff. He said they did not do anything on the lower end. So I do have a full set of lower end, bottom end gaskets, and obviously the head gasket and all that stuff had been put on. I've got motor mount bolts, the exhaust, carburetor looks there. Really what we need to do is get into that motor and see what is done, if it is done right. Hopefully it is. Not here to knock anybody for what they've done in the past, but you never know. I've done this enough that I've seen some, shoddy work. I've seen some really good work. So parts, I like that. I've got stuff, things and stuff. Let's go over to that workbench. We'll take a look at the motor and kind of go from there. And so here we go. Here's the 300. It's complete. It's all together. I popped off the port, so I was going to check out some timing. He said that the guy told him that all that was left was to do the timing. Well, you and I both know that you can only do the timing one way. So if the motor's together, the timing should already be done. So that kind of worries me. I got the plug out already. I did that earlier, and I did pull off the little inspection covers here. And we'll line everything up and see if it's actually timed. If not, then that's probably going to be our first step. All right, we've got the rocker covers off, and you'll see that these 10 mils in here are completely loose, and there's just play everywhere. So I don't know if that's just because they never set. I mean, I really don't know why they would have backed everything off, but you never know. You know, whatever anybody does, these are completely loose. So there's no valve lash right now. It's just well, there's a ton of valve lash right now is what I really mean. So I'm going to get in though. I'm going to pop the cover off and see what the timing looks like. I think that's our number one step, and we got to go from there. So watch me do that quick. Pretty simple, a bunch of 10 mil bolts all up top. Now, when you do these in the center, that is also the cam guide. So we got to be careful. I'm going to mount the motor right here so nothing comes flying apart when we take it apart. Does that make sense? Sure. Yep, does to me. One thing I did find in the box at the bottom were new valve seals. Green ones sitting down in the bottom, and I was like, oh, great. That means they didn't do them. But looking in here, I see new valve seals. They look good. Well, they look new, I should say, but they do look absolutely new. We have some assembly lube. What looks to be a brand new, absolutely brand new cam, because it still has the coating on it that has not worn off yet. So that's good. That means those are new bearings. So we'll set it up. Tension seems okay. And it actually does look like it is sitting at top dead center right now. So that's a plus. So hopefully they did do this right. Now, on this, and a lot of these engines are the same. Now, granted, not all of them. All right. On the cam, there are two lines. One notch here, one notch here. The majority of small engines like this are the same. You line up that cam gear, and both those lines go parallel with this head. And when those are in that location, you flip it around to the other side, you look in that little inspection port, and you should be able to see the timing mark on the flywheel. Looking at that, they are lines up good, lines up good. All right. So that looks like somebody at least took the time to do something right there. Right here, this hole right here. This is a little inspection port. There's a cap. You did have it here. I already took it off. And if you look inside that window, okay, and you'll see here we've got the notch line. You'll see the arrow in the background. They line up, and then you'll have a mark on the flywheel that has a T. Line it up with the T, not the F. That's top dead center. The F is for fire. So it's as easy as that. Well, the timing looks good, so that's good news. So that tells me that somebody knew what they were doing when they got in there, and I'm happy with that. We'll get these caps back on. We'll get the valve cover back on, and then we have to do is set the valve lash. So like I said, those were completely backed out. I mean, something maybe this he did. There's nothing wrong with that. People do their own things. The timing chain, the tension feels pretty good. It looks like it's a brand new tensioner. It is a brand new jug with an oversized piston. So I don't recall what size he said this was bored out to, but it was a whole aftermarket kit that he bought together. So, man, I'd hate to have to tear this all back down just to see if that was done right. I think what we'll do is throw this on a battery once I get everything done here and set, and we'll just pump it a couple times, check the compression. We'll know right away if those rings are half decent, if they did it right. I think they did, though. There were a couple of bolts missing here. I'm going to find some in my collection, get those all together, get this piece back together. And I think we're moving along pretty good. We'll go back in here, and then we're going to check the valve lash, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. When you're going to rebuild your Honda, these older models like this, don't freak out when you get your whole gasket set and there's not a valve cover gasket here, because that takes RTV. Your valve cover gaskets are actually going to be the seals that go over top of the rocker covers there. So Apply a very, very thin layer of RTV here. There's not a lot of pressure up here. Just put that on. Gray is your best. Um, Little extra dab in these corners of the seal for the cam, and you'll be good to go. Make sure you don't cake it on there. If you do, what happens is you press globs into the interior of the engine here, and they tend to break off, and then they drop down in the oil system. That's why when you're taking some apart and you get down in the oil filters, you see these little chunks of silicone. That's what that comes from. So be very careful. Little tiny bits, all you need. The more you put on, the worse your seal will be on top of that. So just a nice, simple coating. Little dab will do you. And actually, before we throw that valve cover back on, I'm going to go ahead and check the head bolt torque. I'm hoping that they didn't crank it down too much. I'm hoping they did the right thing. But these, for the TRX, there are two Allen and 4 hex. So these are supposed to be at 29 foot-pounds. I want to see that they're at least 29 foot-pounds. I don't know if maybe I should go ahead and back them off and crank it back on just to be sure that they're not at 69, 100 foot-pounds, or what. I don't know. Kind of stinks. I gotta kind of just at least hope that the person who did it looked up specs and torqued them properly. Yeah, I think I'll be happy with that. All right, valve lash is pretty simple. It's nothing difficult. As you can see here, he's got everything just really loose. So we look up the tolerances, and let's see, O2 TRX, exhaust valve clearance, 0.006 or 6 thousandths. So go ahead and select our 6 thousandths on our little gauge tool here, because you can get these in any auto parts store. You're going to slide it up underneath, and you want to tighten the center down until it's kind of snug against this, until you can just pull it out. And that should give you the clearance you need. You want it to be just kind of finger tight, or not finger tight. I don't know how you say it. You want it to be just tight enough where you can pull it out and it's a little snug. It's pretty good. So it's not compressed, and I can still fit this in here if I wedge it back in, and then I can kind of pop it back out. And that's all you got to do. And then you want to tighten that down. So I check them a couple times, put it in there, tighten it down until it's just kind of snug, slide it out, put it back in, do it one more time, slide it out, and tighten it down. That's how I like to do these. So not much to do in valve clearance. A valve lash, I should say. It feels good. And there we go. That is 6 thousandths. Intake side calls for 4. So we'll swap the blade over to 4 thousandths, do the side the same, cinch these down to maybe, I don't know, 5 foot-pounds or so. Nothing crazy. and we should be good on lash. Well, we got the motor all buttoned up, so the next step is to throw it on back on the bike. I am not going to let you see my fat butt trying to waddle this thing and shove it into that little orifice. So magically, it's going to appear back in the bike. Whatever, it's in. All right, sorting through, I think I found the bolts for the mount. Mountuses. Oh. There they are. All right, now these are for the front. Oh, cool. Oh, these are all corroded. Let's throw these in the cleaner. Make them pretty once again. We'll let those sit in there overnight, and then we'll come back tomorrow. Mount it all up. But the bolt holes are lined up, and what a pain in the butt that is to do. But it's done. It's done. So another problem that Mauricio said he was having with this was second gear. Said that the clutch seemed to really slip in second, but the gear was grabbing, which is kind of weird. I'm not 100% sure what that means. But second gear is a very vital gear for pulling. So if the clutch is shot, it might pull through the clutch. I don't know. I have to get in there and see what it really looks like. Otherwise, we got a problem with the gears themselves, because the clutch is going to be the same clutch for every gear that you're in. So hopefully there's not a crazy issue there, but he says every other gear is really good. However, when he brought it by, he said that the guy who was working on it was going to throw this in just to warm up the engine and clean it out and test fire it and all that stuff. This is SuperTech regular 10W40 vehicle motor oil. It's no, you can't put this in there ever. So something to think about, and something very important to learn. After you rebuild the motor and you want some break-in oil, you can't just go ahead and throw any old regular oil in there. Unfortunately, you're going to have to spend the money, get the wet clutch oil. Those friction modifiers and all those things in there are very, very vital to these clutches. If you put this in there, you're going to soak that clutch in it, and I guarantee you, your clutch is going to slip even when you change the oil. So never put regular oil into a wet clutch. That is, I think I've said it before in other videos, very, very important. So lesson learned, no big deal. We didn't put it in there. However, I'm going to go ahead and pop this off and see what the deal is. So again, his complaint was second was weird, so I go first to third. Let's fix that. Let's do our best to fix that. I'm really hoping that's not a gearing issue. And again, like I said, second pull's different, but everything pulls different, so I don't know. I'm a little worried about that. Hopefully it doesn't have any huge issues in there. It is what it is. So let's bust this cover off and start looking at the clutch and see what we find. Little public service announcement. When you guys are working on these things and putting back together, you do not need to cram these bolts in at 10,000 foot-pounds. I get it, you don't always have a torque wrench, but you need to just snug them sometimes, so especially these little 6mm bolts. Taking these off, if I can't even take a cheap drill and back them out with it, then you are way, way too tight. And then I got on here with some big wrenches, and I had to break. I thought I was going to snap some of these bolts in half. Thank God we didn't, but you do not need to crank them down that much. cover off, and I was immediately reminded when I opened this up that Mauricio said that the guy told him there's a bunch of shavings down in the motor, metal shavings. It does appear fresh. It's nothing from bearings or anything like that. I didn't ask why. I forgot to ask why, what caused it, but I'm guessing something up here. He had to either drill or shave or fix to try and do that, and he got a bunch of shavings in the oil, and he flushed it and flushed it and flushed it, and I can smell the WD-40. He soaked it down with WD-40. And I will tell you, there are shavings galore down here. So I'm not really sure what he did, but it is not good. Really hoping that I can flush all of this out, but that is a lot of metal. Like I said, I know it didn't come from, it came from something he did. He got metal shavings down in there. So be careful who you pay to work on your stuff, please. Anyway, I'm going to start flushing and flushing and flushing and trying to clean this thing out the best I can. Get all that chunk out of there, all that nasty. Once I am content, we'll move on. All right, well, I just talked to Mauricio about what the deal was with the metal shavings. He was warned that there were some down in there, but the guy said he flushed them all out, and it should have been pretty good. Apparently, there was a fitment issue up here, and he had to use a die grinder with this big bore. And apparently, he did it on the engine and allowed all that to get down in there. Now, I can't express enough how much nasty is down in here. I mean, that will destroy this engine in an instant. And on top of that, this guy was going to try and flush it out with regular motor oil by running it a little bit and doing an oil change. Be careful who you send stuff to. It's not a knock on you, Mauricio. You never know. People say they know how to do stuff. But, man, we're going to get this right. It hasn't been run. So I don't think a lot of these shavings have been sucked up and stuff. And the strong smell of WD-40, he must have just soaked it down in there to try and get it all out. Now, we're not going for a crazy full rebuild. The attempt was to get this running. If money weren't an issue and this is a full rebuild and send it, have fun, yeah, we'd take it all apart. I'm going to try and just flush out as much as I possibly can. It looks like most of it was probably on this side and came down through the timing cover. I'm going to try it. I mean, it's worth the while. I talked to him. I think we're just going to try and flush the living heck out of this thing in hopes that it doesn't suck up anymore, this debris. I think really it was probably something he needed to grind over here, and it came down through the timing cover, and it all sat down on this side, because really I'm not finding any of it back here. It doesn't appear, the main bearings, it's not in there anywhere. I don't know, man. This is one of those things that stinks. But hey, we either rebuild it now or try to attempt to save it, and then if it doesn't work, we rebuild it later. It is what it is at this point. So one thing to keep in mind is this has not run yet, and it hasn't even been attempted. There was no cranking, the engine was out, so we can save it by getting everything out of the bottom. I'd be pretty happy with that. I'm going to jack up the left side here, get a little bit of angle, and then really I'm just going to flush the living poop out of it with some brake clean and go in every oil orifice I can find and try and blast it out. Once I get the oil in there, blast it out with some compressed air. It's really all I can do. All right, as I mentioned before, Mauricio said he was having problems with some of the gearing. Specifically, talked about second gear. I talked to him a little bit more about it, and it sounded more like it was hard to find second gear versus it was slipping. So we may have more of a mechanical issue in there. I'm not really going to know until we get it back together And that's why we're not doing a full rebuild right now. I'm just trying to get it going with the gaskets we have and get everything running again, and then we can find other issues. But I did start going through the plates. You've got your steel discs and your fiber discs, and I know we've talked about this before on the channel, but if you never watched that before, shame on you. They have the steel and you have the fiber. So I pulled all these out of this clutch. This is the one that was in it. They're pretty black. They're pretty darkened. You can tell lack of oil changes, a little bit of heat. You can see the overheating in the discs themselves because you'll find discoloration all around. See, you've got dark spot, light spot, blue spot, whatever. It's not horrendous, for a home run vehicle. Not the end of the world. Let me get into the basket. A lot of it looks pretty good. There is some ribbing here, and when I say ribbing, what I'm referring to is where the clutches have slammed into the aluminum casing and created a little ridge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ridges right there. Bum, 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 bum. They aren't too horrible. I'd still run it, but pretty much if it gets worse than that, you're going to want to replace it. Where I really did find a problem is on the bottom plate, the base plate here. There are ridges in this, and it's like compare it to a brake rotor. They get worn, they get these ridges in them. I mean, you could jump a dirt bike over these. They're pretty bad. So then I went back and looked at the bottom plate of the fiber discs, and I found all the ridges in that as well. So basically, whatever's high on here is going to be low on there, and it's worn through the plate. So that is pretty bad. Again, if it was a race bike, professional use, yeah, this would be garbage. We throw it out. Home use, you could probably rerun it for a little bit, do what you got to do, but you're on the verge of needing to replace that. Your upper cap, top of the pressure plate, looking good. That's pretty smooth. Okay. But luckily, there were a bunch of parts in the box, and with those parts came another basket and another set of clutches. And they're definitely used, but they are much, much better. Now, I don't know if you could see the color difference. Pitch black, dark black, bad oil changes, burns, and all that stuff. You got a brown in there, looking pretty clean. Definitely smells like good oil. These smell burnt. So, we're going to go through this pack and see if these are any better, and I think they are. So, worst case scenario, we're going to go ahead and put this set in and then run it like that and see what happens. But don't be afraid. This isn't a race bike. This isn't a professional racing team. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. And you at home, when you're doing the same thing, mix and match. It's fine. It really is. Look at your basket. Your basket's pretty smooth on this one. You can tell a lot less wear and tear. But when I got through some of these steel discs, see how shiny they are and pretty they are compared to the other one? Keep them off any surfaces here. Look at that. Look at the difference. So nice and clean, pretty, old, dark, whatever, right? However, when I get through some of these discs, I found some that aren't too pretty looking. Look like they got a lot of heat in them. Look at all that bluing. That can cause warpage. So really, we just go piece by piece. And what I think I'm going to do is some of the... I went through them all earlier off camera, but I did find one that needed a little bit of love. So I'm going to show you how you can fix that really quick for a home botch job and get your bike back on the road. So stick around, we'll show you that in a second. Now you have a clutch disc that is slightly blued like this, a lot of discoloration, blued, brown, whatever. You can see there's definite heat in this, and a little bit of heat is okay. It's going to happen on a clutch disc, but when I'm rebuilding them, get in here, scrub it up. I like to use an SOS pad. Clean it up, get all the grease and oil off of there. Now take some 800 grit wet sandpaper, nice and flat on a block. You'll never do it with your finger because you're going to create grooves. It's not going to be level. On a block, get in here, small circular motion. That's 800, so you're not taking a ton off. So you're just going to get in here, scuff up the surface, and get rid of the marks from the heat. And I don't think this one is so bad that any warping happened, but we're going to look at that in a second. I'll show you how I look for warping. All right, I got the steel plate all cleaned up, looking pretty good. This is a small tile of marble or granite, something extremely hard that has an extremely flat surface on it. It's nice to keep a little piece like this. This is a little 12 by 12 block. And I can take something like this, throw it on there, and see if it's actually flat. And I mean, I can tell immediately that this is nice and flat. But this is a great surface to test off of. See if there's any warping. You would know if you touch it on each side if anything's flopping around, or look for air gaps. This is very, very straight. This is a nice piece. So just a little bit of heat damage, no big deal. Scuffed it back up, get rid of the slick spots. Again, HomeBot's job, this will be perfect. It's going to run just fine. So I'm going to go through the rest of those discs, make sure everything looks good, clean them all up the same way, and we're going to start putting this back on this bike. All right, we got the motor back together. The engine's all looking good, plumbed up. Got the linkage on. I guess muffler's back on. Looks okay. I say we see if we can't get it to fire up a little bit. What do you think? Just get a little bit of fluid up in there. See if it'll make some noise. Okay. Well, that's a yes. Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start getting everything else back together.
2, 3, 4.
All right, now as we're getting this all back together, some very important things to look at is the oiling system. You got the oil filter right here. We obviously replaced that. There's a banjo bolt with a line right here that goes from the pump all the way up to the top of the head, right there. There's another banjo fitting behind this little holder. And I already have this loose. What I'm going to do is check for the oil pressure. I want to make sure that the head is getting lubricated. So without any fuel in it, without it being able to fire up, I'm going to go ahead and just crank it over, and I'm going to look for pressure up here. I don't really want to try and fire it up or do anything crazy, especially run it, I should say. As no, popping it off is one thing. There's a bunch of assembly lube in there. So I'm going to crank it over, and I'm going to look for oil dribbling right out of here. Oh yeah, look at that. If you can see it pouring out. So it's got good oil pressure. It's definitely going to be feeding that head. So let's tighten this back up and continue putting it back together. Well, here's the part where you're supposed to see us taking that thing through the trails and having some fun with it, ripping through. Unfortunately, my SD card and camera randomly decided that it was going to reformat after I had already taken all the video. It's not an easy life. But I will tell you this. It shifted through all the gears great. Second gear worked awesome. It had tons of power. It was a lot of fun. I got out in first and just pulled it right up into a wheelie. Definitely a great little bike. It has a lot of potential. It's missing some stuff, missing a lot of the mounts for the body and the plastics. So I think Mauricio is going to take that, send it on down the road, put some money into some of the future projects that he does have coming. We'll see. I don't know. But I just want to let you know that. Sorry to leave you hanging. That's always the fun part. But here's a little bit of seeing it running. Well, there you have it. Another quick and dirty rebuild. Got the motor back together, back on the bike, went through it, made sure everything was looking good there. bolt back on, finding that spare parts that were hanging around, replace a couple bolts here and there. Still needs a lot of love, but you know what? I put gas in it, it fired up and idled. First try. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think Mauricio is too. So we're going to send this off his way. We're going to see more of that. Until then, keep it on two wheels, especially this thing. Whatever you do, don't tell Shannon.